Greetings and blessings to all of you at this gathering of the American Zionist movement and to its president, Richard Heidemann. And congratulations on this conference on the occasion of the centenary of the Balfour Declaration and its continuing relevance today. The Balfour Declaration is just one of a whole series of anniversaries that we're observing this calendar year. The 120th anniversary of the First Zionist Congress, the 70th anniversary of the United Nations vote on the 29th of November 1947. That essentially brought the State of Israel into being, and of course the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem after the Six-Day War. Each of these is an epic moment in Jewish history. But I suppose in some ways the Balfour Declaration is the most significant in that it was the first formal recognition by a nation-state of the right of Jews to return to their ancestral homeland. And it was done by Britain in 1970, just as Britain was really in the midst still of the First World War. And this was a triumph, if you like, of visionary and moral politics over the immediate exigencies of war. The British knew, and there were extraordinary Zionists among the non-Jewish British public, many of them Christian. The first Zionist novel was written by George Eliot, Daniel Deronda in 1876. And there was a real feeling of identification with Jews as the holy people of the Holy Land, who, as the prophets had said, would one day return. What made the Declaration and its subsequent ratification by the League of Nations significant is this. Number one, it was the ultimate anti-imperialist gesture. Ever since the Roman conquest, going back almost 2,000 years, Israel had been not a nation in its own right under anyone, but a mere administrative district of an empire. The Roman Empire, then the Christian Roman Empire after the conversion of Constantine, then the various Islamic empires, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Fatimids, and eventually the Ottomans. And it was with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in 1917 that created the space for the return of peoples of the region to their original sovereignty. And therefore it was the anti-imperialist gesture par excellence. Secondly, Israel was the only nation in that entire complex of negotiations between the British and the French in 1917. The only nation today that represents a historically grounded nation. All the others, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and so on, were artificial creations done really by politicians in the West drawing lines on a map. Whereas Israel had been its own nation state from the days essentially of Joshua all the way through well over 1,000 years to the destruction of the Second Temple and the suppression of the Bar Kokhba revolt. So it was absolutely the restoration of national sovereignty to its original inhabitants. And finally, of course, and most importantly, it was a statement that the Jewish people needed a home in the Robert Frost sense of the place where when you have to go there, they have to let you in. And heaven knows how many hundreds of thousands or millions of Jewish lives might have been saved had statehood been granted then and not, as it was in the end, only 3 years after the Holocaust. Frankly, today, Israel has to remain absolutely central to our identity and consciousness as Jews in the diaspora for three obvious reasons. Number one, because Israel is the only place where Jews can do what they've been commanded since the days of Moses to do, which is to construct a society built on justice, compassion, the sanctity of life, and the dignity of the individual, to build a society in accord with its own most cherished ideals, the right that every other nation has sought and achieved and taken for granted. Israel is the only such place. Jews have been everywhere in the world in 4,000 years, but everywhere a minority and usually without rights. Only in Israel do they constitute a society-building majority. And that is central to Judaism, to the Torah Moshe, to the most of the 613 commands of the Torah. Number two, Israel is the living epitome of what Tikkun Olam and Kiddush Hashem actually mean. That as Jews we seek to be true to ourselves but a blessing to others regardless of their identity and faith. Israel is a world leader and has been for a long time in many forms of technology that have proved to be absolutely life-saving. Agricultural technology, water conservation, medical technology, information technology, nanotechnology, and they have shared that technology with every country that has sought their help and advice. And of course, it remains absolutely first in the field in disaster relief, in treatment of the ill, including 2,500 people from Syria since the Syrian civil war has been going on, and so on and so on. Israel is a living embodiment of Kiddush Hashem. And thirdly, of course, we have to face the fact that anti-Semitism, which the world vowed after the Holocaust would never deface humanity again, has sadly returned again. And the form in which it exists today, for the most part, takes the form of anti-Zionism. Jews turn out to be the only nation on earth that have no right to their ancestral home. Now, I'm sorry, but that is really anti-Semitism by any other name. And the truth is that we therefore have to continue to fight for and be living ambassadors for Israel. And we do so with pride, because Israel for us is the collective expression of our life. It is the latest chapter in the great book of Jewish history. It is the place that every Jewish heart calls home. So blessings to you, and let us thank Hashem for the Balfour Declaration, for those who made it possible, and for the state and people of Israel today.